Hey, welcome back to the channel where we talk all things engineering, technology, and finance. Before getting into today's content, make sure you hit the like button below and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that way you're up to date on all the latest content that we post to our channel. And lastly, make sure you share the video with friends and family. As I always say, we don't want to hoard the knowledge for ourselves and we want everybody to learn. So let's jump into today's content.
So here's what I'm going to do for you guys, and here's what the agenda is going to look like. I'm going to share a video. This is the first thing that I'm going to share. And you guys are going to hear a little bit about my story because I think the video does a good job of just shortening it because there's a lot of stuff in there, and I don't want to keep you here forever on my story. And then after that, we're going to go into a little PowerPoint presentation. It's going to talk about what life looks like after becoming debt free. So again, my story is I paid off $360,000, and that's US dollars, of course, in 5 years, a little less than 5 years. So translate that to Canadian, pounds, euros, whatever you guys are into. I'm not sure because I know we have folks from all over the world right now, but yeah, it's 360,000 US dollars. And again, like I said, it was less than 5 years. So I'm going to play a little clip about that story. You guys can hear it and you can listen to it. And the clip is me being on a pretty popular show over here in the United States. It's called The Dave Ramsey Show. So if you don't know what it's about, it's a show where people learn about finances, personal finance, and all the things in order to be successful in there. And the gentleman has a show where he hosts in Nashville, Tennessee, and we got the opportunity to go there and share our story with the world. So you guys are going to actually hear that now. And then after that, like I said, I'll bring up a PowerPoint, talk a little bit about that. And then I'm opening it up for questions and answers. So does anybody have any quick questions before I play the video? All right. So the other thing that I'll ask too, if you can, give me a thumbs up or, let me know that video's playing on your end. You can hear it, no problems, because I want to make sure everybody can hear that. So welcome everybody. Today we're just going to look at a quick video about what is my story and my financial journey. And hopefully you guys get some value out of it. So real quick, the story is I paid off $360,000 in 5 years. And so you're going to see two things, right? You're going to see a video of the Dave Ramsey Show. And for those folks who are not familiar, it's a very popular personal finance show over here in the United States. And you get to see my experience on there. And I'll also talk about my story a little bit in more details in there. And then after we're done with the video clip, we are going to do a PowerPoint presentation where you get to see what life is like after that. And then I'm going to open it up for questions and answers. So if everyone's okay with that, give me a thumbs up. And then while I get things going here, also as well, you can use the reactions too. There's like a little thumbs up there as well. You can let me know if things are okay on your end, like you can see and hear the video. So perfect. Let me cue this up.
How much do you pay off?
All right. I'm the numbers gal, so I'm going to give you the specific details. $359,833.55.
Hey guys, quick pause here. If you're interested in watching the Dave Ramsey clip of me and my wife on there talking about our debt-free journey and a little bit more about our story and what we did in order to get out of debt, a link will be put in the description below where you can follow that link and watch that particular segment of us talking about our financial journey. But in the meantime, let's head back to the financial meetup where we can learn about all the questions that I was asked. Welcome back, folks. That is the story of the Dave Ramsey Show, of my time on there. And it was a pretty cool experience. Now you've got to hear a little bit about my story, some of the mistakes that I've made in college and what I did in order to rack up that much debt. You also got to hear how my wife threw me under the bus and said I wanted to buy a motorcycle with my student loans. All that fun jazz was in there. So the next thing that I'm going to do for you is I'm going to share a little bit of a PowerPoint presentation. And so the PowerPoint presentation is just going to talk a little bit about what life is like after the whole Dave Ramsey Show. And by the way, we were on the show March of 2020. So right before the pandemic, literally, I think it was when we got on there, we were on the show and the pandemic came in like a week or two afterwards. So what an interesting time to get out of debt, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on the screen here the PowerPoint presentation. We'll go over that real quickly, and then I'll turn it over for questions and answers. And if possible, because I want to see all your beautiful faces, turn on your cameras so that way I can say hi to everybody and I can make sure that, I know who I'm talking to. So real quick, right? You guys heard my story. It was 360,000 that I paid off with my wife, and we did it in about 5 years, a little under 5 years. So 337,000 was in student loans, 9,000 was in a car, 7 on a credit card, 4,000 in a furniture, and 2,000 in medical. And I'm sure you guys also, so all of that was broken down in the Dave Ramsey show, but I'm putting it back here again just in case if folks don't remember what that was. Hey everyone, I wanted to have a little bit of a serious conversation with you guys. So if you don't know my story is I went deeply in debt in student loans, and I ended up paying off $360,000 in 5 years, a little less than 5 years actually, where now I get the opportunity to just enjoy my life, be able to spend time with family, be able to spend time with friends, be able to create the ideas that I have in my head instead of just working from one job to the next job to the next job. And if you don't believe me, let me show you what my view is today. So this is my view for today. I get to hang out in this beautiful spot in downtown, and I get to just think about the things that I want to do in my life. And I'm not going to lie to you, I remember being in that position where, I was constantly in stress, financial stress. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know who to turn to. And it was just always living paycheck to paycheck to paycheck. And it was a miserable time, I will tell you that. But here's the thing. You don't have to live like this. You don't have to figure it out, right? We have resources out there. And I am announcing today that my company is going to be offering a resource to you guys in order to be able to help you out with your financial troubles. So if you're interested in any type of financial mentoring or financial coaching, there's going to be a link in the description below. And when you click on that link, it'll take you to my calendar where you can go ahead and book a session with me. And in that session, we go over your financial picture. We go over what are some of the goals you want to achieve, and we come up with a strategy and a plan in order to get you there. So if you want to stop worrying about money problems and you want to get the stress out of your life and have a bright outlook towards life, go ahead, click on the link in the description below. Go ahead and sign up for your mentoring/coaching session, and let's get you on a path to success. I'll see you there. And so where are we today? So today we're doing about 300,000 in household income. And so I also put down here possibly maybe 450 to $500,000, depending on there's some opportunities that my wife and I are discussing right now to see if that's something that we want to do. But if it's something that we decide to do, it can shoot up to somewhere in this range. So I'll keep folks posted in the future if they were interested in knowing what that looks like. And in as far as net worth, how much we have today, when I wrote this, we had about 400,000. And that was, I think, a couple of months back. So this number has gone up since, but as of late, with the markets making a downturn, the net worth also has gone down a little bit. But what we've been doing is buying more assets as we've been going along. So when the market recovers, I would imagine that this number is going to shoot up even higher than the 400. But at the time that I wrote this, that's where we were at. We were around 400. And so what are we doing from an investment perspective today? So we have here in the States, for folks who are out of the States, we have something called the health savings account. So it's a way to take money, put it into account, and purchase anything related to medical expenses. So it allows you to be very, very tax efficient, in meaning that you can put money into the account, you can invest the money, and then you can pull the money out for health related expenses and not get taxed. Really, really cool. So if you want me to talk a little bit more detail on that, how that works for my folks who are in the States, I'll let you know what that how that works, and you can take advantage of that. We also have what's called an IRA here, which is an individual retirement account. It's money that you can put into an account where you can save for your retirement. And we max that out at our household. So you can do here in the States, maximum of 6,000 per individual. So 12,000 is my wife and I. And then we also have 401k, which is a retirement account as well. And that's through our employers. So here in the States, you can do a maximum of 20,500 per person. And that's how you get the 41,000 for my wife and myself. And then we also have what's called the 529, which is an educational savings account. So that way we can save money for our children. And we do for their education, by the way. And we do about 10,000 per year is what we do. And also as well, we're even thinking about kicking this up because they made some adjustments to it in recent years where now it's not just college expenses. You can actually use it for K through 12. So when people, like, for example, they send their kids to private school and all that stuff, they're leveraging stuff like this, meaning they don't go to work every day to make money to send their kids to private school. They'll use stuff like this, grow the account with the markets, and then pull money out of the account in order to pay for their kids to go to private school. So we could talk a little bit about that as well if you're interested. But a lot of the stuff that you see here, it's, utilizing the markets in order to grow money and multiply money instead of you having to go to work for money. And then using it for all kinds of expenses. As you saw, there's education, there's medical, there's retirement savings, all kinds of stuff. And then the last thing, of course, on this list is the brokerage accounts. So a brokerage account, for those who are not familiar, it's a way to take your money and invest it into different assets. So for example, if you want to do stocks, you can do index funds, all kinds of different things. And the brokerage, the brokerage account is outside of retirement, meaning this is separate from what you're doing from a retirement perspective. So we're doing right now roughly about 102,000, and I expect this to increase a little bit, given that our numbers will change over time. And so one of the cool things that I'll do is once you start asking your questions, we can talk a little bit into the specifics of what those are, so you can learn and hopefully apply it to your situation. And then the last slide that I'm going to present before I turn it over to questions and answers is just a way for you guys to connect with me. Like, there's going to be a lot of information that we're going to throw here. And I don't expect you guys to all learn it at once. It took me years to understand this, and this was in my 20s. So I put down ways for you guys to connect with me here. This is my YouTube channel. And instead of this really long link here, you can just search for Acosta E.T.F. So the purpose of this channel is I teach people about engineering, technology, and finance. And so think of it like an ETF. What we call here is like an investment fund. In my channel is like an investment in you, right? If I can teach you engineering and technology principles, then I can get you to get a high paying job. Or maybe you can create your own product and be the next Jeff Bezos. I don't know. But the point is teach you the skills in order to drastically grow your income. And then once you grow your income drastically, how do I get you now to manage the finances correctly and know what to do with it once you start making that kind of money? And that's what the F is for, right? The finance part. So check that out at your own leisure. I also do a lot of what I talk about here is also going to be on that channel. So if you want like step by step on how do you do something, chances are I already made a video on it. And then also as well, I've put on my LinkedIn profile here. So you can always contact me through there, see what's going on. You can shoot me a message. Or lastly, if you want to, I put in my phone number. So for those in the States, you can give me a call. You can text me, whatever you like. I'm here to help you guys to be successful, because it kind of gets lonely in the top, right? Not everybody's in these positions. And the higher up you go, the less and less people that are there. So I want to bring people with me just as much as like Anton or some of the other people that I've met who were generous enough to obviously give me their information. So I'm going to leave this here for you guys. You guys can obviously take a snapshot, take a screenshot, whatever you like. But I'm here to help you out. So you let me know how I can do that. And then the last thing I'll say is I can leave this slide on here, or I can put it on the last slide where you saw how the money was being broken out. Whatever you like, I will just go by what the crowd is telling me. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'll turn it over to you guys, and you guys can ask me any questions that you may have. I'm an open book. I will answer anything to the best of my knowledge.
Hey, Lewis. So
What's up?
what was your I guess your personal uh income? Well, not income, but your expenses as you were going through that process.
Great question. So during that process, our personal expenses were extremely low. I'll give
Mhm.
you an example. So Nisi is very familiar with the area that I was in before. So I actually lived in Philly, and I lived on the boulevard in this beautiful apartment that was two, three, I think it was no, sorry, it was 2 bedrooms with a huge office, like a den. And I was paying somewhere around the lines of like $1,300 for this apartment. And we were never really home. And we thought of like, oh, family would come visit us and that kind of stuff. And nobody really ever came. So when we were, going through the process, we said, well, how do we cut down our expenses even more? And so we ended up moving over to New Jersey, and we moved over to this spot called Lindenwald. And if you guys are ever, familiar with that area is not the greatest. And so obviously the rent was a lot less, right? And we moved to this small little 1 bedroom apartment. So we went from like I think it was 1,200, 1,300 to about $700 for rent. And for like, just to give you an example, for food, we had a $400, excuse me, not 400, $200 budget at the time. So it was $50 a week. We ate a lot of rice and beans. And then folks that are familiar with the whole Philly area, we used to go to Cousins Supermarket all the time. And we bought just a lot of rice, a lot of beans, and a lot of like chicken and that kind of stuff. And we just ate the same stuff all the time. So honestly, to give you some perspective, when we started, it was about 110,000 that we were making. I believe we only spent maybe about 30 at most. At most, it could have been less. It's been a couple of years, but I'm pretty sure we've spent probably less than 30,000.
I have a question.
Yes.
In this time when you and your wife are paying off your debts, are you all taking on any additional work, any additional side hustles, anything like that to pay it off?
That is an excellent question. So we did, and I'll give you a little tip here, because this will really, really help you out. So one of the things that my wife and I did, we had 6 jobs between the two of us, 7 if you kind of count the second master's that I did. So I got a second master's during this time. I worked 3 jobs. My wife worked 3 jobs. And I would literally fly in from different places because I was traveling a lot and working for a company. So I would fly in, go to the second job, and then do my third job on the side. So just to give you some perspective, I was an engineer, well, still am, but I was doing engineering work and flying to other parts of the country, building products for the military. And then I would fly in and go to work at Best Buy on the weekends, and then do like computer jobs on the side. That was my third job. And my wife, she was a finance manager, and she also did Burlington, which is a retail spot. So for folks outside of the United States, Best Buy is a retail electronics store. Burlington is a retail clothing store. And so she worked there as well part-time. I worked, like I said, in Best Buy, and we all did our little hustle on the side. So she did financial models for small businesses. I did computer repair jobs. And then also as well, I balanced a second master's on top of that. And the one piece of advice that I would give you guys during this time is I really limited myself to like my skill sets. What do I mean by that? I flew back, right, from working as an engineer from this other company. And then I went to go work for Best Buy. I should have never been in Best Buy, right? I should have looked for another engineering job that paid $200,000-$300,000 or another $100,000. And here I was trading my time in for, at the time, what was it? $8, $9, 10, 12, I don't know. Something minimal, right? But the point is I had skills as an engineer. I don't know, when you're in the thick of things, you don't think of stuff. But looking back at it, I was like, why did I waste my time at Best Buy? Like, I really should have gotten another engineering job, built some more skills on top of that, and then also as well made another 6-figure salary. And I could have done, we could have done it way faster, but I wasn't, at the time you don't see that. And in hindsight, you're just like, man, had I done that, I probably could have shaved off another year or two. So that's the tidbit that I would give you guys. If you guys are, have some good skills along those lines, don't settle for, little jobs like that and waste your time.
Another question: did you still invest while you were paying off your debt, or did you put a pause on that?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Say that again.
Did you still invest while you were paying off debt?
Great question. Yes. Did I invest while I was paying off debt? So when we were on the program says to stop all investing and make sure that everything goes into the debt. We had a hard time with that. We did not want to do that. So we, I want to say for 2 years, we were just investing. We were making our investments. We were investing in our 401k and all that other stuff. And I want to say by year 3, things really got to me where I was just like, you know what? The faster I get out of this junk, the faster that I can start investing more money. Like, it's so true when people say, hey, when you focus on one thing, you can just get done with it very, very quickly. So around year 3, we just cut all investing. We just stopped investing, 3rd year in. And then all the monies on top of that, we took the money and then just started pounding away at the student loans and all the other debts. And we just started to get rid of it faster. And then the funny thing about it is by the time we came out of the mess, that same intensity for the student loans just shifted over now to the investing. And that's how we're able to do like $100,000 for like brokerage accounts. People are like, well, how the heck you guys are able to do that? Well, it's the same concept that, like, to me, money doesn't, it's not any different. Like, how I was paying it for the debt, I just shifted over to the investments now. And then the investments just really, really grow on their own. So hopefully that gives you some perspective on what we did. By the way, a lot of very good questions. A lot of good questions.
Hello, this is Elijah. Did you have 3 jobs before or after you went to school?
Great question. So I had 3 jobs afterwards from my first master's. If you're talking about my second master's degree, then yeah, I had 3 jobs and my master's on top of that. So it would have been like 4 technically.
All right. So with that, did you find any time to, like network or, just, be social outside of, all the things that you had on top of you?
No. So one of the things where I struggled with is obviously networking, because I devoted my time to, generating as much income as I could have. Like, one of the things, and that's why I said, looking back at it, I'm like, man, I did a lot of things wrong, but some things right. And that's an area where I didn't get right, because I invested a lot of time in just generating income, and income that is not really that good, if that makes sense. Like, for example, I talked about the Best Buy thing. I shouldn't have been in Best Buy. And then on top of that, how do I say this without because this is going to be on YouTube. The people that you meet in certain places, I'm sure you guys have heard, hey, divest yourself from those that are not going in a certain path. That is what I would say, meaning I didn't really network with people in that area because I knew they weren't going in the path that I was going in. So I didn't spend much time there. I was more of like, hey, let me get in, let me just do what I need to do, put in my hours, get out. And a lot of the networking that I did were just on the job things. So for example, I really, really networked a lot in my engineering job. So a lot of those contacts today are the same contacts that have gotten me positions in other areas of engineering, which turned out to be a lot more lucrative than, say, for example, retail. So definitely network if you can. But you'll find a lot of stuff to do that. You'll find a lot of time to do that. And I can give you some examples as to how you guys get things for free today that I didn't get back then, if you want me to elaborate a little bit on that. You're on mute, Elijah, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I was just saying everybody likes free, so I'm more than welcome.
All right, cool. So I will give you this little tidbit, and obviously in a professional setting, right, you would never really say this, but for example, I told you guys I have a second master's. Did I really need that second master's? Absolutely not, right? I think once you get the first one, I already know that you can think, you decided to specialize in something. And so, I believe that you can kind of switch transitions a little, meaning like, hey, you're smart enough to do this. I think you can do something else. So then the question is asked, why did you get it then? So one of the reasons why I got it was because I realized that it was very lucrative for me to get it. And what do I mean by that is, here in the United States, student loans are on pause right now, right? Or the interest payments are on pause. Back then, that wasn't a thing, right? And so I had figured out back then that my student loans were subsidized student loans, federally subsidized. So what happens when you go back to school? The government picks up the interest. And so I had also realized that my company had paid for, they were willing to pay for my degree 100% for free. I didn't have to. And so meaning I went back to school for a second master's because my company paid for it. And then on top of that, now that I was a student again, the government picks up the interest and the student loans stop accumulating. So if you think about it, right, out of 337,000 in student loans, 225,000 was my own. The rest was my wife. And so if you have 5, 6, 7% growing on 225,000, that's a lot of money. And so I had went back to school. So the government picks up the interest, and then I just kept on pounding the student loans with the income that I had, and it was all principal payments. It wasn't principal plus interest. And I had to come up with clever ways like that to get into the same freebie spot that you guys get today for nothing, which is the pandemic gave you a pause on your student loans. So this is what I mean. Like when people tell you guys, like, take advantage of the opportunities, I spelled it out for you there of how you have an opportunity over me. But this is what they mean when they say, look at your opportunities and capitalize on them. But I guarantee you, just like a recent video that you saw by, some of the folks, like, for example, I think Anton did this 2-3 days ago. Nobody's paying the student loans. Nobody. And the crazy part about it is that this is a once in a lifetime thing in history. And nobody's paying them off, which is really sad because this is what I had to do in order to get to that spot. And you're getting it for free and nobody wants to take advantage of it, unfortunately. So that's an example of how I utilized, the opportunities in front of me to get ahead.
Did you ever mention what your second degree was?
My second degree is computer engineering focused in cybersecurity and networks. So all the degrees that I have, they're all engineering, very, very hard topics. No underwater basket weaving degrees.
I got another question if no one else has one.
Yep.
Doesn't sound like it. So as you got these degrees, you're getting a job, you're getting experience, right?
Yep.
While you're getting that experience and of course making more money, what did you implement any ways that you can prevent lifestyle creep? Because of course you're making more money, you're putting it towards your loans and investments and everything like that. But
Yep.
like you said, you got a wife, you have a kid, all right, and they may want some things from time to time. So how did you how are you able to balance that type of stuff?
That's a great question. If I'm going to sit here and tell you guys that I'm a pro at it and all that other stuff, I'd be lying to you. We are all humans. I have the same desires as all you guys do. And I think one of the things that helped us out is when we were in that stage of getting out of debt, we had to really sit there and think about what is important to us. And those are the things that we constantly kept thinking about, like freedom, the ability to have choices to do whatever we want to do. Those things meant so much to us that we just stopped caring about all the other stuff. I'll give you an example. To me, when I see like cars, some people are huge on cars. For me, I don't really care about cars because I think of it as, it's just transportation. It's just a means to get there. Now, do I want a nice car? Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I'll buy probably a Lamborghini one day. Sure, because I want to experience everything in life. But as you kind of grow out of it and mature of those things, you start to realize that the more important things in life are the relationships that you build, the people that you get around with, the people that you make a small impact. Like, obviously, there's a reason why I'm doing this for you guys, in the sense that I don't know who you will be in 10 years from now. But if I played a small role in that, that makes me feel like really, really good, knowing that, man, I changed the trajectory just by having a conversation with them. And it didn't take much, right? It maybe took an hour and a half of your time, and you probably thought of something differently. You're just like, wow, what a different way to view life. Let's try that. And then all of a sudden you become successful. That is an awesome, awesome feeling. So for us, those are some of the things that we think of. And then the other thing I would say too is, over time, as your investment starts to grow and start doing its thing, you can buy whatever you want at that point. You know what I mean? Like, it gets to a point where your investments start compounding. And when they start compounding and you have to spend $100,000 per month or $1 million per month, then, it's like you start running out of stuff to buy and be happy. So really it starts within first. And I think mastering that is one of the things that we really focused on at the time when we were getting out of debt, because we had no choice but to do that. We didn't have any money. And then we started to like realize, like, wow, you can do this fun thing without having to spend this much or this or that. And then ultimately over time, you kind of just grow into that mindset. And I think that's kind of what helped us out with not, increasing lifestyle and all that other stuff.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Thank you.
I had a question.
Yes.
Looking back at just everything, is there a different way you would navigate the whole process?
Looking back at it, is there what? I'm sorry?
A different way you'd navigate paying off your debt.
A different way to pay off the debt.
Such as like the mistakes that you've made.
Oh, yeah. So like I said, I touched on one of them, which was I should have never went to a retail store. I should have utilized my experiences as an engineer to land another engineering job and make a lot more. And instead I wasted my time with a retail position. So that's the one big mistake. The other mistake that I would say is, when you're getting out of debt, or you're just in that phase, like not much is going on, you're just not doing anything because all you're doing is paying off debt. I wish I would have probably invested a little bit more time into just trying something, meaning like, go code something, go bring a product to the world, like fail. You got nothing else, but you already failed already. So you're just picking yourself up after all that stuff. So go fail again. And I wish I would have probably tried to acquire more skills. And that ties into like the whole retail thing. I wasted my time in the retail. So I probably could have taken that time, applied it to other skills, and tried failing in that manner. And it could have turned into something more, and could have, like, obviously gave me more income. Because now I find myself like, man, I want to go try that thing now. Let me go try coding, or let me go try being a YouTuber, or whatever the case might be. Like, I wish I would have done that back then. So that way I could have taken the income that I've grown out of that and then put it towards the debt even faster. And then ultimately grow the asset, which is either the skill, the business, or something along those lines. Like, a lot of what's important to you guys, and you probably don't realize, is like, those are assets, right? Your skills that'll generate the income or the business. And during that time, I thought of, I need to work more hours to generate more money to then buy or, pay off the debt. But in reality, if I realized, like, man, if I would have grown more valuable skills, I could have had an asset for a lifetime and generated a lot more money towards the end. So I think those are some of the big mistakes that I've made.
Would you say that instead of going to like more schooling, you should have, done more things such as like product development, stuff like that, or getting more certificates or security clearances, things like that?
Well, it depends on what time are we talking about. Are you talking about during my first master's or my second master's? What period are we talking about?
After you already got your first, and then instead of getting the second one, I mean.
So I wouldn't. I think the second master's was a great play. I don't think it was something where I wouldn't have, because if you remember, I used the second master's in order to stop the interest on the accumulation of the loans. So 225,000 at whatever percentage. And I gained some more skills because I learned cybersecurity, I learned networks. That was huge. It was a double play. So I don't think that was a bad call.
Okay.
Like looking back, like the journey pretty much. Like, do you have like any regrets? Like when you putting the pros and cons based on the way you use, success is not like a one-way street. You turn left, right, all of that. But like when you analyzing it, I know you mentioned something about like the Best Buy, but like an overhaul beside the Best Buy, like when you're looking at it in general, like much bigger point of view.
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. So looking back at the journey, I don't regret it at all. I think it's probably one of the best things that ever happened to me. And the reason why I say that is because if you look at what majority of like people, right, just in America, I don't know how it is in either, like some of you guys are in the UK, some are in Canada. I don't know how it is over there, but here in America, a lot of people don't get the opportunity to even, like, for example, when we talk about 360,000, that's the size of a house. A lot of people take 30 years to pay that off. So I paid off a house in like less than 5 years, right? Or a little less. And I did this all in my 20s. So what does that do? That gives me the skills now to understand how money works. Yeah, it was a huge failure, but it taught me how money works. It taught me everything that I know from that perspective. So now going into my 30s now, I have the ability to really skyrocket where most Americans, they, kind of just, walk around through life. I call it zombie, right? Where they're just, walking around, not really thinking about much or doing much. And so now I can really start to accelerate in other areas, whereas most people don't get that opportunity. So I think the process, while it was terrible at the time, meaning I was going through a lot of pain, it really, really formed who I am today. So I wouldn't say it was terrible. Like I would say that it actually molded me to become, the person that you see in front of you today. So I think it was good for me.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
Another question. Thank you for that tips you just mentioned about like when you have the loan hold up, pretty much like the interest is accrue, because like that just dawned on me like recently, because I was like I received a call from one of my service on loan, and I'm like, oh, so there's no interest rate, so just throw money in there because like that will help you to pay quicker. So that's why I was like, okay,
Yeah,
pretty
yeah,
much.
absolutely.
So that it just dawned on me like about 2 weeks ago, and then like I'm like, and when you mention it now I see the connect the dot. It was like, oh, that's certain things like like a lot of people doesn't know, but things like that.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
my next question was gonna say, how valuable, like, because I know during that process, having your wife going through it, how valuable was that? Because like one thing, the asset that she is, because in finance, so when you guys because like doing that 300, that's a lot. But how valuable was it, like having your wife going with you to that journey? How valuable was that? Because like it might be one thing with you two doing it, but what if you were by yourself? Do you think you could have accomplished it that quick or that the way it was, pretty much?
I love that question. That's a fantastic question. So two things. So folks on the call, if you're married, right, if you're married, right, a lot of people will understand when I tell you this. There's nothing more difficult than getting the other person to do what it is that you want them to do, right? The thing is as a married couple, you have to be one, right? You have to march to the one beat. And the thing is that if you're trying to run left and she's trying to go right, or vice versa, you stay in the same spot, and you stay in the same spot for years, and it really, really sucks. So the fact that my wife and I, we had nothing at the time, we were just starting out, to be able to work together as a team and accomplish a common goal. We take the same lessons now, and we're running like we're really running in the directions that we needed to go. And we learned all that stuff back then. It is very hard to kind of hang out, not really do much for years, and then like 10 years later you're like, all right, we need to get serious, because now you got to reverse 10 years of the same behavior. And that is very, very difficult. Now, from a single perspective, I will say that if you don't have somebody with you, the beautiful thing is you don't got to convince nobody to do this stuff. The problem is that you got to be accountable yourself, right? The only person you got to convince is yourself, and you got to stay accountable. So I would say that if you are single, get with accountability partners, get with people who are going in the same direction that you're going in. Because one of the things that was very easy for me to do is lean on my wife. Like, there was many times that I wanted to give up, and I was going to give up. And then she would pull me in and say, no, honey, come on, you got this. I know you're tired. I know you don't want to go to the other job, but you can do it. And it was the same for her, right? When she would get tired, I would send her off and be like, hey, no, you can do this too. And in fact, actually, we cheered each other on. And so when you're single, you don't have that. So that's where the accountability partner comes in. So hopefully that helps out in answering the question, but that was a very, very good question. I think Nick had his hands up. So Nick, did you want to ask your question?
Sorry, I'm on mute. Yeah, just because I think you mentioned something about cybersecurity. Would you ever consider teaching cybersecurity?
That's a great question. I don't know if I would teach it in a setting where I'm in a classroom, because some of the things that I think of today is, how do you scale to help out people the most you can? The problem with the classroom is I'm limited to whatever school I go to work for, and I'm limited to whatever the amount of students that I can hold in a room, or the blocks in which that I can do it in, right? Or the other case that I can do is, if I really wanted to teach, I can make a YouTube channel where I teach about engineering, technology, and finance. And I do the one thing, and I reach millions of people with only doing the one thing, and I reach them for many years to come. You see how that works?
Yeah.
That's why I really don't have an interest in teaching in a school setting. But if I were to teach some things, that's where like the YouTube channel comes into play. And so that's why I was telling you guys, find the opportunities, because the opportunities are in front of you. You just have to know how to look at it. Problem is, a lot of people are blind. They don't, like I said, I call them zombies. They're the zombies of the world. They're just kind of floating through life. Everything's okay. We're going to eat some food here. We're going to wake up. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And 10 years goes by. And then you're kind of looking around like, gee, nothing's really changed in 10 years. And that's kind of what normal people do, at least in the United States. I don't know how it is in Canada or the UK for some of my other folks here, but feel free to chime in if it's the same over there.
Okay, I got another question.
Yep.
So what would you say to people to protect themselves from another recession coming up?
That's a great question. One of the things that I will tell you about preparing yourself for a recession is your skills. Your skills will always be recession proof. I'll give you an example. When you are responsible for designing, I don't know, let's just say, I'm going to make this up, but you're designing a product, and the product is to protect, let's say, the United States of America. Not very far off from what I actually do. But anywho, the point is when you are designing those products still have to continue, right? They have a contract for 5-10 years. And the thing with that is that it's very hard to find those people, meaning that all the people that graduated with me from an engineering perspective, I remember they told us, look to your left, look to your right, only one of you is making it. And that's exactly what happened. And so when we're designing, let's say a fighter jet or something along those lines, that fighter jet still has to get designed and still has to get built because we still have the contract that is in place. And so the people that they constantly look for are the same people that have the same credentials, right? You got your engineering degree, you have, let's say, for example, a clearance to work on those type of products. It's the same like 5-10 people they're always fighting for. So that's what I mean by your skills will be recession proof, in the sense that, let's just say from a job perspective, they're always going to look at the same people with the same skills, and they're always going to fight for the same people with the same skills because nobody has those skills. It's a supply and demand thing, right? There's not a lot of people that do engineering, but there's a whole lot of people that do, say, service-based jobs, right? Anybody can go in and make a cup of coffee. There's not really much skills there, right? Or even if you want to take it beyond a job, right? Let's say you've passed the whole job thing, and you're well on your way, you have investments going for you and all that other stuff. Recessions hit in different places, right? So people who have taken the time to really set themselves up and put money in different areas, right? Let's say, for example, you have the housing bust of the 2008 that we had here in the United States. So housing went down, but it could have been that your stock portfolio was doing okay. So you can leverage your stock portfolio to say, oh, okay, well, I'll buy the houses that are around me for, pennies on the dollar. And then when it rebounds again, your assets have really, really turned you into a millionaire and has really surpassed anything that you could have done from working from a job perspective. And you can parlay that into anything. So I would say, just to get yourself started, it's really building those recession-proof skills. And then you leverage those recession-proof skills to really grow your portfolio. And then your portfolio is what's going to allow you to jump into other areas where you can really start to take off. And, you don't have to just do real estate. You can start doing, as I mentioned, the stock market. You can do cryptocurrencies, other areas of life. And then now at that point, you're starting to multiply money, and you're starting to do it very quickly. And whenever a recession comes, you don't really care if gas is $5 or $6 at the pump. That's kind of how that works. Natasha, you had a question?
Yeah, so to kind of tag on to my fellow Canadians question, I notice over time, like if you look at the history of recessions, they don't actually last long in and of themselves, right? They're like 2 quarters, maybe 3 quarters on average, right? So I'm more curious as to how you take advantage of that small bit of time, that couple of months, and arguably we're literally in a recession right now. It's just that it's not going to be reported until probably next quarter or the quarter after. But how do you take advantage of that post-recessionary period, right? So if I look at like what happened in 2008, I haven't looked at the one before, but in addition to making really smart market plays, like you were talking about, Louis, like some people started businesses strategically, right? So wine, for some reason, was like a really, interesting play to make during the last recession and post-recessionary period. I wonder if you have any kind of crystal ball predictions as to what this post-recessionary period might look like.
So that's a great question. I will tell you that one of the things that we like to do is look for the opportunities that are around us. I'll give you a great example of one of the opportunities. There's a fund that I've been buying quite some time now, and I invested, I wanted to say, so off the top of my head, I know I invested 68,000, but I'm trying to remember at what price the fund was at the time. I'm pretty sure at the time it was about $116 per share that I was buying it at that time, and that was a little over a year ago. Today, right now, I just looked at it in the morning, it's $94. So what do you think I'm doing? I am buying more of it.
It's on huge sale, right? Because the thing is that this fund that I'm talking about right now, it has a couple of companies all together into one. And for me to say that Microsoft is going to disappear, Amazon is going under, Facebook is not going to be a thing, like that to me is the end of, our economy and the way, in which we live in it. So I feel very, very comfortable. And like I said, always do your research, make sure you talk to others, bring in some professional help if you're not sure of this. But I make those plays because I look at that situation, I say, that's an opportunity, right? And so when the fund bounces back up again, all the money that I put in at $94 versus what it goes back up to, that's the growth, right? So you want to see those opportunities that are around you, and always keep that in mind. There's always opportunity everywhere.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions? Go ahead, Tobias. You can ask it. I don't mind.
What do I have? So I'm not sure how to ask this, but you mentioned
However it's going in your head is however you can spit it out.
I guess hanging out with people that are going in that have the same trajectory as you do.
Yep.
With being with those people, how do you maintain your budget? So like, for example, my mentors, they like to hang out at, expensive bars and things like that.
Yeah.
And so like being with them, soaking up the game, I might end up spending $50 and messing up my budget for the week. So
Yep.
how do you maintain that discipline, I guess, while still networking and trying to build your network?
That's a fantastic question. I love it. Okay. I'll give you some tips. Tip number one, you talked about the bar, right? You don't have to spend a lot at the bar. Like, for example, you can go ask them for a cup of water and you can sip on that cup of water, and people are not going to go in your drink and be like, yo, what you got there? Is that a cup of water? No, they're going to be interested in having the conversation with you. They don't know what you're drinking. You don't have to tell them what you're drinking, but you can do a cup of water, which is free, right? Or if you really feel the need, like, okay, well, let me get something. One drink, say like it's a Coke product, maybe it could be $5. You tip your bartender, $1, $2, whatever. I want to say with maybe $10 at most, you can spend on that bar situation, and that won't kill your budget, right? That's okay. Another example I'll give you, when I was networking all the time in the company that I was working for, we had these events where we would bring in, I guess they were called candidates, right? People that wanted to work for the company. And we would kind of work our way to kind of say, hey, these are top talent, meaning they've graduated with masters and blah, 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 blah. We want them to come work with us. So what did we do? Every company does this. We would obviously put them in rooms where they would have catered meals. They would get to talk to the directors that would come in. You're basically wining and dining them, right? In order to say, hey, come work for our great company, right? And build up that talent pipeline. So I would always volunteer. I would always go in there and say, hey, I'll be the engineer to say, what is it like working for the company? What do we do here? I love it. It's a fantastic environment, so on and so forth, which all those things were true. But the thing is they had catered food. So that was the times I would go out to eat for free. And then I would also, because they were going to throw out the food, I would literally say, hey, you guys mind if I get a to-go plate, whatever? And I would literally load up a lot of plates and bring it to my wife, and my wife would have free meals as well on top of that. And then guess what? Because we were trying to get those candidates to come in and work for us, we had directors there. We had all kinds of very important people there. And over time, they're like, who's that guy that I always see? He's always in all of these meetings and he always volunteers. Let me go say hi to him. And then all these directors started contacting me. And then that's how I started building relationships. And what do you know? That was another way that I distinguished myself out of 110,000 employees in the company. And so when people are like, well, how do you know the CEO? How do you know the director? How do you know this? And I'm like, you'd be shocked that if you go to some of the events, nobody does it. Nobody wants to go. Right. So those are
Those are two examples of how you can do it on the cheap and still get the results that you want. And then over time, when you have a budget where you can actually start going out and not caring about it, then that's a different story. We can talk about how you can utilize those as like business write-offs and that kind of stuff.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, I use that tip all the time. You'd be surprised at how many times I ate for free and how many connections that I made. I feel like Des has a question.
Do you actually do work in cybersecurity?
Great question. Today, I don't do any work in cybersecurity. The work that I do is in product development. I do a bunch of development of chips, IC, integrated circuits. And so
go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say one of the aspects of that IC is we do have a security chip on there. So yeah, I could, if I really wanted to, I could use my skills in that area. But right now we're behind on another area. So they have me working on the area that we're behind in.
Okay. So my question was, I'm in the IT field and I'm trying to go down the route of certificates. Would it make sense to go the route of getting a degree instead?
Great question. I would say you have to do a combination of you would have to really do research. And what do I mean by this? I was just coaching somebody the other day where they were saying, hey, I want to go into a boot camp in order to be able to get into cybersecurity in the cybersecurity field. And they were going to pay $15,000 for this boot camp. And it just so happened that I coached them and I looked at the budget of what they were doing and where the schools were in that particular area that they were in and what the schools offered. There was a school within his area for $10,000 and he would have gotten a 4-year degree and it would have gotten him into the same space. And then on top of that too, it would also have gotten him in the doors that he wouldn't have gotten into with just a boot camp. Because one of the things that I will tell you is over time, as you grow in your skills, you don't want to be the person that's shoveling the snow all the time. You want to maybe oversee a team, right? So you can get more done and impact the world a little bit more. And so in order to get in those doors, they'll typically require a 4-year degree or something along those lines. And you won't have that opportunity with just a boot camp or maybe just a certificate. So what I would tell you is look at those options as far as like cost, time invested. And then what I also want you to do is look 10 years down the road and say, hey, if I'm going down this path, am I going to just want to do this one little thing for 10, 15 years? Chances are no, you want to grow. And then if you want to grow and maybe you want to lead a team, you want to lead an organization or possibly a business area where you're impacting the business. And then at that point, you're providing much more value than an individual contributor level. Those are the requirements you have to start looking at today. And that's what you start building towards. And that will tell you whether or not you get a certificate or a degree.
I came in tardy. I apologize. I wonder
That's okay.
I wonder if you covered insurance, wills, estates, and like when you started thinking about that.
Great question. I have not. So we can actually talk a little bit on that. So let's talk a little bit about insurance. You need insurance the moment you're able to get insurance, in my opinion. There's nothing worse in life than leaving the burden on people to bury you, burn you, whatever you guys do in your cultures or your ideas. You don't want to leave that burden on them. And so insurance is an absolute must. Now, what type of insurance do I get in my family? Here's what I would tell you. I would tell you, do the best that you can in getting people around you to educate you on the different types of insurance. But I've done enough research to figure out that term life insurance is the best for us. So if you're unfamiliar with what term is literally just that. It's for a period of time. Once that period expires, you no longer are eligible for that particular life insurance policy that you got at the time. Now, keep in mind, let's say, for example, I get the term at 20 and I get a 20 year. So that means that at 40 years old, this term is going to expire. You can then apply for another term insurance at that point. But keep in mind, you're older, you may have health problems at that point. Depending on how well you took care of yourself, that term insurance will be more expensive than when you got it at 20, because 20, obviously you don't have any of the weight, you did all that, you're a whippersnapper, as they call it, right? So that's something to think about. And the reason why we decided to go down that path, and I'll tell you why, is because in 20 years, right, by the time you get to the end of that term insurance, you really need to have your stuff together by that point. Like, I mean, get rid of the debt, start investing, start making sure that you're on a path to financial success. So that way, when you get to that point, you become self-insured at that point. You really don't need life insurance. And you don't need life insurance for the things that are important. Like, for example, let's say two things that is important that comes to mind: A, final expenses, right? And then B, taking care of the people that are needing to be taken care of after you're gone. I'll give you an example. If I have a kid at 20 years old, right, and let's say the policy is for 10 years, at 30, that kid is still 10 years old and still dependent on me. So they're dependent on my income. So you want to make sure that, you have enough money to the point where if you're gone, it's still able to take care of that kid. You don't want to leave them alone, right? That's what the dependent is. So one of the things, like I said, that we focused on was term insurance because it was one of the cheaper options. And then the difference of the monies that you would spend, meaning if you were to go from term to whole life insurance, that difference that you would spend, we decided to pay off debt, invest. So by the time that the term policy is over, we're self-insured at that point. So that's what we did from a term life insurance perspective. To give you a perspective of what I have 2.7 million for me. And my wife has 1 million. And what does that cost us? 2.7 mil cost us $400 per year. And my wife is 226 is the number that's rolling around in my head. So just to give you some perspective on what that is, right? So you're talking about $2.7 million of coverage. That's $37 per month, right? At $446 per year, which is what I think I pay off the top of my head. So what you guys spend in, and when I say you guys, I mean ordinary people, right? I don't know what your budgets might be, but what people spend on going out to eat, they spend more than $37 on going out to eat. They will do that instead of going buying a life insurance policy. And if something happens to them, they're the ones that are doing the GoFundMes or the fish fries or whatever you call it. But they won't spend the $37 per month to make sure that their families are protected. So it's absolutely critical that you have life insurance to protect you. And the reason also why I talked about, term life insurance as well is because I do it outside of work. That's another tidbit. I never tell people to get the insurance at work. Get it at work if they give it to you for free, but you don't want to get it. You don't want to get the policy in work. And I'll give you an example why. But the thing is when you get it at work, they'll typically qualify you in that setting, right? You're in the job. And let's say you get cancer, right? They're going to give you time to go fight your cancer and recover and all that stuff. But then over a period of time, they're going to say, you know what, Sally? I know you've been fighting cancer and it's tough. Trust me, we're here to help you, but you're not showing up to work anymore. And we really can't afford to just keep you on the books. Right. And then we're going to have to let you go. I'm sorry. And then when they let you go, well, what do you know? You had the insurance through your job. You no longer qualify. And then you want to go get insurance outside of your job. You no longer qualify because now you have the cancer, right? You want to do it before then. And so that's one of the big reasons why I don't get insurance through work. I get it only if they give it to me for free. But if it costs me anything extra, I look outside of work. So that's what we do from a term life insurance policy. Nick, you have a question?
Yeah. So speaking on insurance, I just want to get your thoughts on term life insurance versus whole life insurance.
Yeah, so we do term life insurance. And the reason why we do term life insurance is because it's really all that we need, in the sense of we need it for a certain period of time, right? And that's the term portion. And then also as well too is how much money can we get for that life insurance? Because here's the purpose of the life insurance. The purpose really is not only obviously your final expenses, but how do you take care of the people that, are dependent on your income? So how you calculate that and how you think about that is, let's say, for example, today I generate $300,000, right, from a year. If I were to get a $3 million policy, right, and they pay my wife $3 million when I die, she can then take that money, invest the money, and the average, right, 10%, you can get a lot higher than that, but 10% in the market, right, that's 300,000. So I've effectively replaced my income even after my death. And so how can I get that coverage with the least amount of money? Because I really want to start focusing on getting out of debt, building wealth on my own. So that way I'm no longer dependent on spending money on a product that I really don't need if I can self-insure myself. And typically whole life is a lot more expensive. And then there's a whole lot of other gotchas that I can go into, but that's one of the reasons why we decided to go with term. Does that make sense as to how we did that?
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. What's up, Tobias?
Yeah, and one of your slides, you mentioned the investment account for your daughter. Can you kind of speak on that? And I guess, like, what are the, restrictions around that? Like, can you pull out at any time? Or are there any penalties if you pull out at a certain time? I guess, can you kind of just speak to that account and what are the rules around that?
Yeah, absolutely. So one other thing I will mention too is that the account, I actually like log into my account and I show you how much money is in there. It's actually on my YouTube. And if you go to my YouTube channel and you look at how to pay for college 529, I actually show you like what's in the account and everything. Today, my daughter has, so my daughter is 3, she has 15,000. And that's because we lost money in the market right now. Everything is not doing well. And it's okay because she has, she's 3, she has 17 years, or excuse me, 15 years. Geez, I can't do math. She has 15 years to go to school, right? So I have 15 years of growth and recovery. So I don't really care about what it's doing today. And my son, who's 9 months, he has $4,000. So one of the things that I want you guys to look at, and I talk about it in the video, is it's an educational savings account if you have kids. And so the 529 is a really good account where it allows you to put money into the account. And of course, it's after tax dollars. And what you can do is you can then invest it into different funds. And then over time, it starts growing and it starts compounding. And then you can use that account to pay for educational expenses. And some of the cool things recently that have changed is before, like I mentioned, it was college. Now you can do K through 12. So if you want to send your kids through like private school and that kind of stuff that we're planning on doing, we're going to leverage that account in order to spend on education expenses. And the beautiful thing about it is, let's say, for example, I'm going to just make this up. I put in $1,000 and it grows to, let's say, I don't know, $20,000, right? So I have $19,000 of growth. And that's obviously unrealistic, but I'm just making this up. So now that growth of $19,000, let's say that I'm going to go spend it on, I don't know, private school for, I don't know, 12th grade. Well, because it's an educational spending now, I can pull out that $19,000 and not get taxed by the government on that $19,000 that I didn't have to go to work for. Whereas most people, what they do is they just save the money themselves. And then after some period of time, they say, yes, we've saved this, we have this, let's go spend it on this. And that's the end of it. Whereas what we do is we're leveraging that account to let it compound over the years. And that's what's going to pay for when we get to either, the private schools or obviously college as well. And then the other question you have to ask yourself is, well, how much money do I need to put in there, right? And if you go into the video will walk you through on how you can make those calculations to figure out how much money you need from the perspective of, let's say, for example, my daughter is 3, right? So in 15 years, how much money is college going to cost me in 15 years? And so what you have to do is you have to figure out what the rate of inflation is in college and then back that into how many years you have. And that'll give you the total amount of monies that you need to save for. So that gives you the target, and then you have the savings, and then over time you monitor the account to see how well you're doing, whether to put more money in or stop putting money in, because obviously you don't want to put too much in and overfund it. But hopefully that gives you some perspective as to how we're looking into that account.
Another question.
Yes.
Can you open up that account in preparation for a child, or do you have to have a child to, I guess, associate that account with? Does that make sense?
Yes. So I had to have the child already for that particular account because they asked for the child's social security. Now, that's not always the case. There's some accounts where you don't have to do that. And some people even get clever too. Like some people, they might not even do a 529. I've heard of some people buying real estate as a form of investing in their children's education. Like, for example, they may say like, you know what, I want the ability to not be subject to only educational spending, right? I want them to have the money to, if they want to open up a business and not go into the traditional 4-year college. So they'll purposely buy a house as an investment. And then over time, house appreciates, they'll go ahead and sell the house in 18 years, whenever the child's ready. And then they'll take the proceeds and give it to the child to do whatever they need to do. Like I've seen all kinds of stuff, but in our case, in our home, we brainwash our kids and we say, you're going to college, you already have money, this is what you need. Because here's the other thing, you're not really efficient. Like say, if your kids want to go to college and you buy the house, well, there's no tax shelter from that perspective, right? Like I can get, I don't have to pay taxes on the 529 because it's an educational spending account. Whereas you don't do that with the house, you're going to get taxed on the gains of the house.
Thanks for that.
Awesome. I think we had, is it Eli, right? Eli? Ellie. Sorry about that, Ellie.
No, you go. Yeah, quick question. Oh, thank you for that's very valuable. A lot of gems you're sharing. I appreciate that. My question was, do you guys, because I know based on everything that you were mentioning throughout the video, do you guys have a process, a system to make sure, because there's so much to be able to do it, but there's a way to make sure, because I know you're working 3 jobs, she's working 3 jobs, and then make sure to keep track of the numbers and what system or process you guys use to organize yourself to be able to make sure, yeah, you have a goal, but you have to have a structure. That's my quick question. I want to find out about that.
That is an excellent question. Man, you got all the good questions, man. I'll tell you. So here's the thing. One of the things that I would recommend is, if you all have not read the book, Work the System, and let me get the author's name actually. Sam Carpenter is the gentleman. So the book is called Work the System. And it says the simple mechanics of making more and working less is really what the book is titled. And so one of the reasons why I recommend that book is because if you look at life in general, all around you, everything is a system. From the moment you go into the McDonald's where you place your order, and then it magically goes to the kitchen, they're already making your order, and then it somehow, 30 seconds later gets in your hand, that's a system. And it's no different from that McDonald's to how money is handled in your house, meaning the money comes in from, a job, whether it's a W-2 or maybe you have a business or whatever the case might be. What systems do you have in place in order to make things work smooth and seamless so you don't have to spend a lot of time thinking of what you need to do, because that's where you're going to waste a lot of time if you don't have those systems in place. So I'll give you an example. In my home, we already have a system in place where before the month starts, meaning we're in June, we're already going into July. Next week actually is our budget meeting. My wife and I, we sit down and we already have things planned for the month of July. So it's actually the 25th, so it's next Saturday. And that's a week before July starts. So we already know what we're going to do in July before July even hits. That's one example. And then when July already hits, right, the budget that we're discussing that maybe takes us 5 or 10 minutes to do today, which before it took us like 2 hours because we didn't know what we were doing. But the 5 minutes that we spent today, it's what does our excess cash look like? Well, what are we going to spend? And the excess cash that I'm talking about is cash after all accounts are fully funded. We pay ourselves first. And what do I mean by that? That goes into the health savings account that I was talking to you about. That's already funded automatically. We have automatic accounts that pull out every time. So we don't worry about, like, say, retirement or any of that stuff. That's all on autopilot. So whenever we get paid, before any money comes into our house, our HSA is fully funded, our IRAs are funded, our 401k is funded, our 529s are funded. Like, this is all stuff that I don't have to think about. And so at the end of the year, when I pull up the statement and they're like, oh, you've invested, $100,000, let's say, for example, I'm not sitting there like wondering, like, how did I do that? It was accounts already have automatic withdrawals and they're already pulling out the money. So by the time the money comes to our house, taxes have been paid, everything has been funded, and we say, okay, cool, I have $10,000 left for the month. What do I do with $10,000? And then we say to ourselves, oh, okay, well, we really only live on 5, let's say, for example. So what can we do with the other 5? Do we want to buy anything? No, not really. Okay, cool. Put it in the brokerage account. Let's buy some more assets with that. And then over time, when the brokerage accounts really starts to, build up, then you can start saying to yourself, well, what else can we do? Oh, there's a real estate property that I want to buy over there. Well, let's pull out, I don't know, 300 grand and let's go buy that real estate property. And where people spend a lot of their time saving for money, right, and going to work, we'll just say leverage the brokerage account where we're buying everything on a discount now. And then when it goes back up and we have the gains, then I can say, oh, well, let me take the gains and buy like a real estate property with that, just as an example. And that's one of the things that we do from a system that we have in play for our money.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
absolutely.
because like I'm always like, I always try to compare because I'm always saying like the sun come up, you go down, and the moon. So there's a system, there is a like a order to certain things. So I want it to be like because yeah, you have to have a great mindset, but like it's gonna structure, discipline, and things like that. Make sure on the day to day, because sometimes nuances will come in. Certain things might throw you off, but when you have a system, so it keep you in balance pretty much, or it keep you in line.
Absolutely. And to even tie to that, right? There's also, and I talked about this in one of my YouTube videos, there's also a system in, like, let's say, for example, it took us a while to get to the point where all of our accounts are maxed out, right? Meaning the 401k, the HSA, the IRAs, and all that stuff. How do you know where to put money in first? There's a system to that. So we put in certain monies at certain points. And then over time, when our income started to really, really grow, then it gets to the point where you don't have to worry about what system's in place for that, because you can start maxing out all the accounts. But keep that in mind, right? That's a system in itself, figuring out what money needs to go where based on how tax efficient or what kind of returns you get, and all that stuff I talk about in the YouTube channel as well.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions?
I know it was mentioned earlier to use a house as a way of saving money for future expenses. What are your thoughts? I know in the YouTube space, people talk about withdrawing from a house with the, I forget what it's called, HOA. HOA? House line of credit?
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about. So HOA is a homeowners association.
Yeah, not that. HELOC.
So what you're looking at is a HELOC. Yeah. So home equity line of credit. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on withdrawing money from that?
My thoughts on that is it's extremely risky, in my opinion. So here's the thing. This is just me. Everybody's different, because there's a lot of people who love to leverage themselves. And yeah, that's a fast way to make in money, sure. But the other thing that I would say is, and this is something that I learned from even like I don't know, like, for example, if you guys ever watched Alex Hormozy or some of these other people who are ultra successful, like this guy, for example, same age as me, 32, but he's making 100 million per year, right?
And one of the things that he always says, and what I've heard from other people too, it's not just him, but anything zero multiplied by anything is always zero, right? So I don't like, I've worked so hard to get to this point. Let's say I have a house. Why risk your home? Because the thing is, if you pull out the money in the equity, now you're risking your home for whatever it is that you decide to invest in. And if that investment doesn't pan out for you or play out for you, then at that point, you're really behind on your mortgage payments, because you obviously have to pay more now because you pulled out the equity. And then at that point, if anything hits like a recession, right, where we're talking about now, and you can't keep up with it, now you've really run the risk of losing the actual home itself. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to just leverage my my assets that I have in order to be able to buy the things that I need from an investment perspective, and then just hold on to it and keep it as a long-term play for, I don't know, say 15, 20 years, whatever the case might be for that play. And when you start getting into that mindset, you don't really start looking at HELOCs and stuff like that. HELOCs, they're, you know, a lot of what I see people do with it, to be quite honest, is they'll pull the money out to go pay off their credit cards. I see that all the time. And then the problem that you have with that is they never change the habits that got them into the credit card debt. And then 5-10 years later, they're right back to the same spot again. And so now you really dug yourself into a bigger hole, because you took all the equity out of your account and you put it into something that didn't really bring you any value. And then you never change your habits. And now you're back into credit card debt. And now you don't even have any equity in your home. And now you got to pay more money, because you got to pay all that you owe for the house. And then on top of that, your credit cards that puts you right back into the same spot. So that's why I'm not a fan of that. Can you tell that some family members have done that? And I'm very intimate with that. I've seen people do that with their 401ks too. They'll pull out of their 401ks, take all the penalties and all that stuff just to pretty much set them back years, which is so sad, but you know, it is what it is. Any other questions? Sabrina, do you have a question? I know you've been quiet the whole time. Sorry about that. You've been quiet. I said tired.
Oh, no question. Well, let's go back a little bit.
Sure.
What would you say, how important was it for you and your wife to get on the same page as far as the budgeting goes?
So it was extremely important. Without the budget and without understanding where we were going, there's no moving forward. It's like I was talking about earlier, where, you know, you're running a race, but you're running it with ankle weights. You ain't going to go far, right? You really have to be on the same page in order to make sure that you make the most amount of traction in the least amount of time, so you can start doing other things in life. Like, I'll tell you this much. You guys may think that I'm far ahead based on my story, but like 2 years ago, I just hit the starting line. And it's sad because most Americans, and I don't know how it is in the UK or in Canada, but most Americans don't even get to the starting line, which is really, really sad. But, you know, you have to make sure that the budget is in place, so that way you can get to the starting line and then you can get to graduate and do other things. So very, very critical. I'll probably do about another 10 to 15 minutes if anybody has any last questions.
Just a comment, because you made a great suggestion for Work the System by Sam Carpenter. So I went to my digital bookstore. There's a 2011 version with a white cover, but then there's a revised edition that was done last year. It's got a black cover. So just to update anyone to make sure they're getting the most recent version.
Yeah, absolutely. Make sure. And the other thing too is there's like some updates that they make, but I think the core concept is working the system, making sure your systems are in place so life doesn't eat your time. I'll give you another great example. I shared with people that I have people that come in and they clean and they cook and all this other stuff. Well, they do that stuff so that way I can get my time back to do other things and make more resources. And that's the advice that I'm giving here.
Yeah, it's a quick. Since we're on the topic of books, what would you say? Like, what books would you recommend as far as like learning the language of money?
I would say, to go back to the books, Total Money Makeover. We talked about Tony Robbins. There's two books called Unshakable. There's another one, again, called Money Master the Game, The 7 Steps to Financial Freedom. Another fantastic book that I would have never thought about is called The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins. That is the book that taught me how to properly use a health savings account here in the United States. I didn't even know what the heck that was. And I screwed up that account for many, many years. So that's also another great book. And one of the other ones that I would recommend, I'll give you as the last one. There's still a lot of other ones, but another one to start you off with is The Richest Man in Babylon.
I'm very curious how you screwed up HSA.
So I'll tell you how. So one of the things that I would always do is I would put money into the account. And then after I would put money into the account, when I would have a, let's say an expense I needed to buy from, I don't know, cough medicine. And that came to mind because of my YouTube channel. But let's say I needed to buy cough medicine. I would literally just go buy the cough medicine with my HSA. But I didn't know that one of the things that you can do is, and each HSA is different, health savings account, and they tell you what a covered medical expense is. But for example, my wife, she has an HSA where cough medicine is considered a health related expense. So what you can do is you can take the money in the account, you can then invest the money into the account, right? That you can put it into an investments. And when the investment grows to the amount of money that you need in order to cover the medical expense, that's when you can ask for a reimbursement, right? You can pay for it out of pocket today, out of your own pocket. And then you ask for the reimbursement when the account grows, meaning you didn't go to work for that money. It grew with the investments. And then they reimburse you. And because it's a medical expense, you don't get taxed on it. And what I would do before is I would just put money in there, wouldn't invest it, and just buy what I needed. And I missed the other portions. I missed the investing part, which is the AKA free money, and then pulling out with no taxes whatsoever. That's the other portion. So I don't know if did that make sense?
Yes, I'm doing exactly what you were doing before.
You see?
I'm gonna have to go fix that.
Yeah. So in my YouTube channel, I actually, and the reason why I said cough medicine is because if you actually watch my YouTube video, that's actually what I show you. I literally show you the documents of my wife's HSA, and we literally see it says cough medicine is included as a health related expense. And then I show you the investment side of the account. And then when it grows, and the really cool thing is as I mentioned before, you can do this years down the road. So say, for example, you buy the cough medicine today and you keep your receipts and all that stuff, and you're very, very meticulous on how you stay, organized. You can be like 5 years down the road and say, hey, remember that cough medicine I bought 5 years ago? You can send me my check right now. And that's valid. They will send you your check. And that's one way to save for medical expenses, especially like big ones. Think of like, if you're having a child, or if you have, some of these life altering things, like you can really, really leverage the HSA. And the reason why I tell you that today is because as we're young and our bodies start to deteriorate over time, so does the account. The account will start to grow as our bodies deteriorate to help us in those older years with all the medical expenses that are going to come. Because, we're all on the same path. We're all going to get old. Our body's going to break down, and you want to make sure that you have the money that you need in order to make sure that you can take care of yourself. Now, remember, that's the United States. I don't know if how it is in Canada or in UK or some of these other places, but we're not so different. I know that, like, for example, a 401k here, Canada has their own version of it. You just got to figure out and translate what those versions are in your particular area.
Did you have, I don't know if you mentioned it, probably, like any mentors for that journey?
I would say not really. I had some people in my life, but I didn't know that I was outgrowing them so quickly. I didn't know that. They were very to themselves, in the sense that
one of the habits that I found for people is that they don't want to tell you too much because it exposes where they are. And then because of that exposure, they may feel very intimidated that you're actually doing very well and surpassing them. So a lot of people never really kind of told me. I think the only person that I would honestly say that has challenged me to the point where, from a financial perspective, which is one of the things that I look at the most, is probably Anton. I'm not going to lie. Because, yeah, I have had mentors, say, like, for example, in school, right, where they challenged me academically. But school doesn't matter. And it's really not important up until the point where you realize, well, how do I turn it into something that I can monetize? Because learning information just to learn it, which I struggled with that for years, is really useless. Because I've became a student for quite some time that I thought that your income kind of went linearly with your grades, meaning the better grades you get, the more money you make. And that's kind of what I assumed. And the people in academia would kind of tell me the same. And then I started to realize that that wasn't the case. And so that was a harsh reality. And so I didn't really have mentors in that space. And like I said, I ran into Anton randomly. And then I signed up for his seat at the table membership type thing. And the amount of information that he has given me is, I feel like I'm doing a commercial for him right now, but the amount of information that he's given me has really challenged me in ways that I would have never thought. And now I say to myself, well, how do I take what I've learned from the academic space and what I do for a living, and then start to scale it and do bigger things? And that's some of the things that I've never had before. And that's one of the reasons I think why I enjoy his mentorship. And one of the mentors that I've ever really had that kind of really, really challenges me. Most of the other people that I've outgrown them really quickly, or they just didn't know how to translate their skills into a monetized thing, if that makes sense.
Appreciate it. No, that makes a lot of sense, pretty much. So yeah, definitely so much. So just like grasp it and be able like to because like sometimes I think like we have sometimes jealous. Some people are jealous of, they don't know what you're doing in the back and the behind the scene, because sometimes like we only see the end result, but we never know the behind, like how much work somebody put. And then like when that person is saying, hey, this is what I've done, then I'll be like, what are you trying to show off? But it's not like really showing off, but just like showing you I'm just growing, but I just am trying to inspire you, help you to level up also as well. Because at the end of the day, we have to grow. But it seems like when we reach like that high school age, we graduate, we think it's finished, but it's just like that's another starting. Because like you have a daughter, if your daughter is not growing, you feel like, hey, something is wrong. But we understand that consciously for the kids, but like it seems like later on in life we don't apply the same principle, and then we just got stuck in it. Like be like, as they say, after some people graduate, they just like, hey, they just die living the same thing over and over and over and over. Not really grow, but appreciate that and so much value, and keep up the good work. So it just inspired me also as well. Just showing you just have to expand my imagination more and get back to work, pretty much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. Thank you for that. And that's the one thing that I would also talk about is, and I'll leave you with this, is as you start to ascend, there's going to be people around you that will be very, very jealous, or they might not like what you're doing because they want you to be in the same spot as them. And be prepared for that. You know, one of the things that I will tell you is the very people that love you, right? Those are the same people that are going to hate what you do. And you have to be strong enough to be able to overcome that. I'm not even like, it can be your mother, it can be your father, it can be the person you marry. Like, that's how close these people can be. And I've had, you know, very close people to me, you know, they flat out told me, they said, look, I don't want to hear about your success no more. I don't want to hear about what you're doing. I'm going to go do this my way over here. You can go do your thing over there. And, you know, those are the same people that are till this day, they don't want to hear or they don't want to know about, what we're doing. And it's fine because, obviously once things change in the sense that they start to see all the results, as in the houses, the cars, and all that other stuff, then they start asking, well, how did you do that? And by that point, it's like, you say, hey, remember that conversation we had 10, 15 years ago? That's where it started, right? And so I will leave you all with, it's your journey, it's your path. Make sure that you align yourself with the people that, you want to align yourself with in the direction that you want to go with. And I'm not saying that you have to tell them, hey, I don't want to talk to you anymore, but you limit the amount of time that you give to them and focus it on the time that you want to spend in the areas that you want to grow and in the people that you want to be around with. There you have it for today's content. Remember, don't forget to like the video, and as we mentioned, subscribe to the channel so you're up to date on all the latest content that we post to the channel on all things engineering, technology, and finance. Finally, don't forget to share the video with friends and family. We always say this, we don't want to hoard the knowledge for ourselves. We want everybody to learn. So make sure you share the video with friends and family, and we'll see you on the next video.